Hello, thank you for joining. We'll get started here in just a moment and let people join in today. It looks like people are still jumping on, so we'll just give it a 30 seconds or so here before we begin. All right, well, thank you again for joining me today and broadcasting live from beautiful sunny downtown Willoughby. What a gorgeous day again. We've been really blessed with that, haven't we? We took a hiatus. I took a hiatus, not we. I took a hiatus in August and took a break from this. So thank you for joining back up again for the monthly Century webinars. Today, we're going to talk about financial preparedness. Are you ready for a personal crisis or an economic crisis? And we'll just talk a little bit through that. There's some really good resources that I'll talk about and just kind of talk about the basics that should be done to help get you through a situation that may occur in your life. We don't know what's going to happen in life, and life throws us curveballs, that's for sure. So let me get my mouse back here. I can't seem to get it back to the right screen. There we go. Okay, so overview of today's presentation, we're going to talk about preparing for a personal crisis. We've been through a global pandemic. We know what that feels like. And it may still be happening, not really sure here, right? A natural disaster, what if that were to happen? For your own personal crisis, your own personal household, any illness or disability, loss of consciousness, cognitive ability, things like that that can happen, may happen, hopefully don't. But if they do, how do you prepare for that and be ready for that? Then we'll move on to talking about financial preparedness for an economic crisis, meaning stock market volatility, low interest rates, rising inflation. That all sounds really familiar, doesn't it? We're living some of that right now. The stock market volatility we've seen just last year and even before that, not too long ago. So we've lived through it and we get it. But we'll talk a little bit about how do you prepare for that? How do you get yourself ready? There is a Q&A, question and answer box. If you have a question, type it in. I have another screen behind the camera that I can see if questions come up. I will try to answer them along the way. I can see you, or no, wrong way. You can see me, I cannot see you. So do what you need to do. Life is good and I'll just continue on. Hopefully we'll be together here for 30 to 40 minutes. I like to keep these brief, informative, and move on. So let's do that. We'll start with talking a little bit about possible natural disasters, global pandemics, things that, again, that we've seen. So first of all, did you know, and I didn't know until I already put out the invitation to this event, that September happens to be National Preparedness Month for disasters like this. That's something that FEMA puts out. So they observe this in order to help raise awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters. So you may have seen some advertisements that FEMA has put out. They've put out some commercials and things like that to try to get people to be aware that there are ways to prepare that may be able to help you through a situation like this. So being prepared in case of, just situations that may happen. So first, here in Northeast Ohio, we are really blessed to live in an area that we have seen little in the way of natural disasters. But as we know, out west, they're dealing with raging wildfires. It seems like constantly. We've seen in the South a lot of hurricanes and even coming up into a little bit north of there, but a lot of hurricanes. Last month in August, Haiti was hit by a huge earthquake that killed more than 2,200 people. Massive flooding has happened in Western Europe. We've seen that, especially a lot of deaths in Germany from that. So preparing in every way for a natural disaster obviously is not possible, but you can do some things to help your household, your family, to be ready for something if something were to strike close to home. So number one is just create a way for you to have access to your finances electronically. There are secure ways to do this, as secure as possible, but making sure that you have access to your bank accounts, to your credit cards, um, in case banks are closed, or in case, we just don't know what can happen. If there's flooding going on, or things like that, you're not going to be able to get to a bank. So make sure that you have access to that information electronically. Having some cash on hand is not a bad idea. Having some cash in a safe place in your home, whether you have a safe box that you can lock it in, a fireproof box, or some other safe location, um, it's not a bad idea to have that on hand, so that if something electronic happens, maybe there's an internet uh, issue that you can't get to your bank accounts at through electronically, that you have some cash to be able to purchase what you need for your home in order to live your life until things settle back down. Keep an up-to-date list of your bank accounts, of your insurance policies, of your investment accounts. Keeping those in a secure location is a big deal. And this is also not just for disaster or pandemic, but what if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? It's kind of a term that I use jokingly around my house, but if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, my husband knows where to go to look for all this stuff, because yes, I'm the person that handles it all in my household. But even so, if we both die at the same time, if my husband and I get in an accident together, I have two sisters that know right where it is. In fact, I give them a sealed envelope once in a while with updated information, so somebody else that I trust knows where to find our life insurance policies, where to find information if something were to happen. Okay. So those are pretty simple things that you can do. May take some time, but if you have them in place, you're going to really appreciate the time that you spent, in order to, in case something does happen. As far as insurance policies, having those phone numbers accessible of, who do you contact if something were to happen for your homeowner's policy, for your renter's insurance. Understand what they cover. That's something that's a lot of people don't do. We tend to sign up for a homeowner's policy and they cover what they cover, and we don't really review that too much to see what really is covered. If there's a flood in my area, am I covered? And you may be able to add something on to get covered for a situation like that. Certain areas you cannot, but at least you can find out if you feel that there's a risk, see if there's a way to get insured by that. Okay. As far as medical information, of course, having electronic access to your medical records can be really helpful, especially if you're traveling. What if you're traveling somewhere, you get sick somewhere else, or you're in the middle of a disaster somewhere else, and you may need some medical attention? Having access to your medical records, like your MyChart from Cleveland Clinic or University Hospitals, has something very similar. Being able to have access to that and get it to the people that are providing attention to you elsewhere or to a family member, that's really a good thing to do as well. Another thing is, in your wallet, to keep a list of any medications you take and any dosages that you take for that medication. That's another good thing to have nearby, so that, what if you get in a situation where you've traveled and there's been a natural disaster or pandemic and you can't get back home and you need to refill prescriptions, at least you can call, figure things out. And especially for elderly loved ones that that may be on medications that they need, that kind of thing is very important to have with you. So as far as preparing for a natural disaster physically, FEMA has an emergency financial aid kit, and they use the acronym EFAC, EFFAK. It is a checklist of documents to copy, to have in case of an emergency. It has next of kin information, financial and legal documents, all the stuff that's listed here, but it tells you, how do you put this kit together? So, and how do you store it? Where do you store it so it's safe? So that information is all in one place if you were to need it. Again, this is going to take some time. It'll take some time and energy to put together, but just like I don't know if any of you have also put together an actual kit, like a box with flashlights or flares and some food that won't go wasted, some blankets, things like that. Some of us do that just to put in our cars for the wintertime. This is the same idea. It'll be there. You can update it as needed, but there's information that you can get to if need be pretty quickly. The other thing is FEMA also has an alert system, and there's an app. FEMA has a mobile app, so you can just Google FEMA mobile app and find what that is, and it provides real-time alerts. You can tell them, I think it's up to 5 locations that you can put in. So I can say, I want to know if there's any alerts in the Willoughby, Ohio area. Maybe I travel down to Orlando to stay with my in-laws a couple times a year. So I want to see what's going on in Orlando, or just to kind of pay attention for them so I can give them a call and say, hey, the hurricane's on the way. Are you prepared? So, but you can add up to 5 different locations, which they will send you alerts if anything is going on. So that's a really neat thing too. So ready.gov is the resource, is the place that you can go for all sorts of resources, including the FEMA financial first aid kit. So you can prepare yourself and put together some information for yourself to prepare for these kind of disasters. Illness or disability. We don't always think of that kind of thing as a pandemic or a disaster, but boy, it certainly can be if something were to happen to you, right? If you're a 2-person, 2-worker household, if you have a spouse or a partner, just think if one of you were to become ill or become disabled and that person's income goes away. And if you're a single household, there's nobody else there, right? So if you're a single household and you become ill or you become disabled, that really affects the income in the household, and you need to make sure that you're covered. So as far as for illness, obviously make sure that you're covered by medical insurance, which if you're employed by somebody else, you most likely are. If you become unemployed, make sure that you continue your employer's coverage through COBRA, or you find an individual healthcare policy for you and your family for the duration until you can get employed somewhere else. Or, what I'm trying to say here is just try not to go without medical coverage because you never know when these illnesses or something can strike. I know individual plans can be quite costly. You may be able to qualify for a policy through the exchange, Obamacare, healthcare exchange, whatever you want to call it. And there are restrictions of who can qualify, but there are some policies there that are fairly inexpensive, or maybe even just get a catastrophic plan if something like that were to happen, so that if you do have a traumatic event or you need surgery or something like that, at least that's covered. Not necessarily I need to go see my doctor because my foot is achy, that kind of thing, but at least it'll cover some catastrophic events. Going back to the medical coverage itself, if you're on Medicare and have a Medicare supplement, or if you're soon to be on Medicare and looking for a Medicare supplement, make sure you understand what those policies cover and where they cover you. Some of the Medicare policies, the supplements or the Advantage plans, some of them do not cover you if you travel out of state, or at least out of the country, and some of them not even if you're out of state. So pay attention to that if you're in a Medicare situation. Make sure you understand where you're covered, and we're coming up on Medicare open enrollment. If you're in a policy that does not cover you and you are somebody who likes to travel and it doesn't cover you for out of state, either look for a new supplement or a new Advantage plan that does, or make sure that when you do travel that you purchase a travel insurance policy that'll cover you for that time. Disability insurance, if you're still employed, is, to me, it's absolutely essential. Unless, some people, if they're nearing the end of their careers and they're getting ready to retire, and if they lose their income, it's not going to be such a big deal because they're financially prepared for that, then not so much. But at 53 years old and I still need my income and I still have a kid to pay for college and I still have 15 more years to work to save enough for my retirement, then yeah, it's essential for me. And it may be essential for some of you on the call as well. You may be covered through your employer. A lot of employers offer short-term and long-term disability, and a lot of them even pay for that for you. Find out if you are covered. If you're not, seek an individual policy. They're usually not too expensive, but if you need it, it'll be a lifesaver. I get my disability policy through an organization that I belong to. So if any of you are not covered through your employer, but you belong to a professional organization because of the career that you chose, or maybe even because of your heritage or wherever, those organizations sometimes offer group policies like that. So think about that if you don't have a disability policy, there may be other ways to do that rather than just going and buying an individual policy for yourself. So loss of consciousness, loss of cognitive ability, how to protect yourself from that is by having your estate planning in order. And I know a lot of people, when they hear the word estate plan or the term estate plan, they think of when I'm dead. And that's not the case. Estate planning documents also have documents that you can put in place to help you while you're still alive, if you happen to lose consciousness or lose your ability to make decisions. And those are powers of attorney. A durable general power of attorney is I can give power to somebody else to make decisions for me, to sign financial paperwork, to pay my mortgage, to take out a new mortgage for me, to do all sorts of stuff. So you got to certainly give this to somebody you really trust. But that person can sign checks for you, make all sorts of decisions for you if I can't be there to do it or you can't be there to do it. A healthcare power of attorney is just that. If I need healthcare or decisions need to be made for my care and I can't make those decisions myself, then who's going to make them for me? And excuse me, for both of these documents, you can name more than one person. So I can name my husband, but if my husband is unable or unavailable, then my oldest sister can make decisions or whatever. And I can, name a few different people. But these documents are very important. And again, if a situation comes up, your loved ones will be very happy that they're in place. So make sure that you seek out an estate planning attorney if you don't have these documents yet to do that. Also, it's possible to, maybe look for a way to pay for long-term care. Can you pay for that on your own? Again, if you lose consciousness, if you lose cognitive ability, if you lose physical ability, and it's for a long length of time, you may need some long-term care. You may need somebody to come into your home and help take care of you. You may need to go into an assisted living or a nursing home facility. How do you pay for that? That's something that I always walk through when I do financial plans for people, is to run a scenario that says, what if you have to pay for 2 or 3 years worth of full-time nursing home care? How do you do it? So that's something that you should pay attention to. Know, can I afford to do this, or should I apply for some sort of insurance to cover a potential cost? All right, so let's move on to talking about preparedness for an economic crisis. And I'm screwing up my screen here. There we go. Okay, so preparing for an economic crisis, as I talked about just real briefly earlier, interest rates rising, inflation rising, which we're in that right there, or preparing for another market downturn. And we know it's going to happen. We don't know when. We don't know how big the downturn is going to be. We don't know how long it's going to last, but it's going to happen. So to prepare for that is doing planning and figuring out, am I set up in the most appropriate fashion to withstand something like that? So some of you on the call, I'm looking at the list there and scrolling through. I see some of my clients are on there that you've already done a financial plan. So this is going to be repetitive for some of you, but others who haven't got a financial plan put together, what it is, it's an ongoing process just to kind of help you make sure that you are set up in the most appropriate way to get to whatever goal it is that you have, whether it be I want to retire by X, or I want to purchase a new home by this date, or send my kids to college, whatever those goals are, to make sure that you ensure that you meet your goals in the most tax efficient way. Financial planning is not just for the wealthy. In fact, most of my clients are middle-class people. They're not wealthy people. It's creating a roadmap for your future really is good just as good for people of modest means as well as for wealthy people. Okay. When I talk about financial planning, I talk about investing, one thing I like to talk about is, why are you doing it? So planning for your why. Okay. Are you planning because you want to retire? Are you planning because you want to do some international travel? Are you planning because you are going to have a child, or you want to pay for a new home, or whatever it may be? You saving and what you have already saved, it takes a lot of time, a lot of hard energy to get to these goals. If you can find through the financial planning process that you have a good probability of reaching those goals by investing more conservatively than you are now, then maybe you would do that. If you can find that you're saving so much that you're going to leave a huge pot of money behind when you pass away, and that's not really what you want to do. You really just want to, maybe live a more exciting life while you're here, not necessarily leave a whole bunch behind for the next generation. And a financial plan shows you that, then it shows you have some more wiggle room while you're here, a more ability to spend more while you're here and enjoy your life. So there's a lot of things that can be uncovered through a financial plan. I'll go really quickly through this, but these are just some of the questions that a financial plan can answer. The number one is the one I get mostly is, when can I afford to retire? Or can I afford to retire? When can I do that to allow me to live the lifestyle I want to live through my retirement? The second question I get most, and the one that I like to talk about the most, is how can a financial downturn affect my long-term plans? That's where financial planning can come into play by helping you be prepared for the next financial downturn. We do a stress test that shows, what if, in the way you're invested today, what if the market goes down like it did again or in 2008, 2009, and it does that again in the year you retire? What does that look like for you? How does it affect that long-term outlook? And can you withstand that? If you can't, then we talk about readjusting the way you're invested, and maybe you become more conservatively invested. So there's things that we can do to help mitigate that issue. Am I properly insured? Again, to help mitigate some risk, make sure that you're insured properly. And if you're not, point you in the right direction to get the insurance that you need to help protect you and your family. Tax reduction strategies, you want to make sure you're taking advantage of that. Are your assets structured to withstand future volatility? I just talked about that. And estate planning. Do you have proper estate planning in place so that your hard-earned assets pass how you want them to pass in the most tax efficient way, with as little court costs, little attorney's fees as necessary? And there's things that you can do now to set up for that. So those are some of the things that a financial plan works through and answers for you. So how can financial planning help you prepare for a crisis? Number one, it allows you to know, where do you stand? Where do you stand right now? Do you have high interest debt that might be able to be consolidated or paid down more efficiently? Know how your assets are invested. And again, can you withstand a recession, or can you withstand a couple years of a downturn market like we've seen? Know if you have funds invested in stocks. Do you need those funds to pay for your day-to-day expenses, but they're all tied up in the stock market? And if the stock market goes down, now you have to sell things when they're down because you need that money on a monthly basis. So things like that is what we want to pay attention to. Okay. Uncovering saving strategies, that's always a big deal in financial planning. And how does that prepare you for a crisis? It gets you more money in your pocket. That's how. Okay. Uncovering saving strategies by looking at tax laws and using them to your advantage, taking tax credits where you can. Reviewing insurance policies. Are you overinsured? Some people are paying for insurances that they really don't need when we dig down into it. Or is there room to save on some of those policies by changing them up a little bit? Tracking and analyzing your spending is something that you can do through this process. And again, are you saving enough for emergencies? So as far as saving strategies, are you putting enough away for possible emergencies? We look at mitigating risk. So as opposed to what I said before, some people are overinsured. Are you underinsured? Are you not insured appropriately? So if something were to happen to you, your family's really going to struggle financially. We want to make sure that we understand that and get some insurance policies in place for you. Are your assets titled appropriately so they pass along to the next generation if something were to happen to you? Do you have beneficiaries designated on all your accounts, or transfer on death designations on your accounts? You can even do that on your home, on your cars. You can do this on all sorts of stuff to help make it easier for things to transfer if and when something happens to you. Okay. And investing appropriately, making sure that, again, your assets are in the right allocation for you. You can listen to the Susie Ormans of the world and the Dave Ramseys of the world, and they do have good things to say. But when they come out and make a blanket statement, you need $3 million before you retire, or you shouldn't have more than 40% of your assets in the stock market, that's a blanket statement that is not geared towards you and your unique situation. So make sure that you understand what's good for you. Okay. So getting these types of things into place can really help you navigate the next market downturn. So one thing I do in my financial plans, I talked a little bit earlier about stress testing a financial plan. And again, this is something that helps my clients understand, can I withstand a market downturn? Can I withstand it? So what I do, and this is just kind of a little example here, is I use what's called a bad timing scenario. And for most clients, the worst time for low returns in the stock market is the year they retire. So you've planned and planned and planned, and you retire, and this is the first year that you need to start pulling money out of all these assets that you've invested, right? And then all of a sudden the market tanks. So in that year, what I do is when we look at a projection for retirement, is I run a bad timing scenario that shows, okay, this client wanted to retire in 2020. What if his or her portfolio dropped by 22.36% in 2020? And then drops again by another 8.72% in 2021. Those numbers are taken exactly from what happened back in 2008, 2009, according to how this person's portfolio is invested. Okay, so what if that happened again? Would this client be able to withstand that? So it's, you got a bad downturn in 2020, again in 2021, and then kind of average annual returns thereafter. Can they withstand that? And that's something that's really good to be able to look at and say, maybe I can't withstand that. Maybe I'm invested too aggressively, or maybe I need to work a little bit longer because I don't have enough money saved to withstand something like this. So there's a lot of conversations that can come out of it, and it's definitely worthwhile to take a look at. And it provides peace of mind when you see that you can withstand something like that. Another thing we talk about, I know my clients that are on the call, you've seen this, we've talked about it, but to be able to ease your concern, to make sure that you are invested appropriately for you and to be able to withstand a future downturn in the market, is to use this bucket strategy. And we're starting with bucket number one, and the numbers in here as far as how many years depends on each client's tolerance for risk, and it depends on how old they are, how long they plan on living, which if anybody knows the answer to that, that would be good. It's easy to plan if you know how long you're going to live. But anyway, the idea is in bucket number one is to keep the first 3 to 5 years worth of your need out of your accounts. So I need $10,000 a year out of my retirement accounts to supplement my Social Security and supplement my pension so I can live my day-to-day life. So in that circumstance, we would want that client's $30,000 to $50,000 invested in very short-term investments like money market, maybe some really short-term treasury bond funds, things like that. Very safe, very secure. I can get to it whenever I need it. And there's always 3 to 5 years worth of money in that bucket. Okay, so the client can kind of focus on, I know that what I need out of my accounts for the next few years, Janice has it set aside in really safe, really secure environment. Okay, and then we look at the next 6 to 15 years or so. Okay, we look at keeping that money in bucket number two, which is a little bit more maybe into bonds and maybe some high dividend paying stocks. Okay, and then bucket number three is things that you don't need for at least 10, 15 years, however long works well for your plan. And that's in the stock market. All right, the idea of this is when the stock market rises and goes up and your account value goes up, we sell some of those stocks and capitalize on the gains and pour that money over into bucket number two. In bucket number two, when the bonds mature or when the interest is paid or dividends are paid, those dollars flow down into bucket number one. It's a constant flow. That's what rebalancing is. When people talk about rebalancing your account, this is exactly what we're talking about doing. The idea is clients can keep their eye on bucket number one and kind of ignore what's happening in the stock and bond market. I know that my next 3 to 5 years is safe and secure, and whoever's managing my assets, whether it's Janice or somebody else, they have it carrying out that they're paying attention to. When the market goes up, they're going to sell, they're going to rebalance, they're going to move money around, and they're going to constantly keep that 3 to 5 years worth of money safe for me. So I know I don't have to worry about what's going on with the stock market. Make sense? Okay. All right. Is it too late? It is never, ever too late to plan. I have clients that are very young. I have 25-year-old couple that I'm working with that just got married in July. And, they're really young. They're never too young to plan either. We're helping them figure out budgeting, saving effectively, understanding their benefits that their employers offer to them, and which should they take advantage of and which are fluff that they shouldn't bother paying for. And just making sure that they're saving tax efficiently. I have older clients that are well into their 80s that we're working more on tax planning, especially like last year in 2020 when the tax laws changed so much. We're working on long-term care expenses. How do they pay for that if something like that were to happen? We're looking at setting up their estate appropriately. And then I have most of my clients are pre-retirees or just early in retirement. And there we're working more on, are you ready to retire? Are you invested most appropriately? And are you able to, how do we set up an income stream for yourself out of your retirement assets? How do we invest them so that it will create some income for you and that kind of stuff? So never too early, never too late. It doesn't hurt to do it at any time. So what can you do today? Number one thing I'd like to do with everything is kind of write down anything that you're concerned about. Do you have any financial concerns about whether it be an upcoming crisis or even just your upcoming goals, life changes, retirement, whatever it may be? Understand what your concerns are. Once you understand what your concerns are, you can help put a plan in place to help mitigate those concerns. Whether it's financial planning, whether it's filling out that FEMA emergency kit and making sure you're prepared that way, or maybe it's putting the stuff in the box in the back seat of your car so that you're prepared for the winter. Whatever it may be, whatever you're concerned about, there's ways to help mitigate that. Take care of short-term priorities always. If you have bills to pay, if you have high credit card debt or things like that, those are the types of things that need to get taken care of soon. However, saving is also a short-term priority, making sure you have that emergency savings for emergency situations, and then creating a roadmap to help you achieve some goals. I'm sorry about that. So to wrap up, again, know where you stand, help put a plan in place for yourself. Putting a plan in place for future crisis, for future stock market volatility, whatever it may be. With the exception of 6 or 7 months or so last year, when we look back the last 12, 13, 14 years, we talk about investing. It was kind of like a warm, quiet pond. We were just kind of floating along and things were good and everything was happy. And when in fact, the stock market typically can be quite volatile. So when you're investing, you want to be careful with that. So understand how you're invested. Is it right for you? Is it right for your goals? Don't worry about what your neighbor's saying or your brother-in-law. What's right for you? Has it been stress tested? Meaning, like we talked about earlier, can you withstand the next market downturn because it's going to happen? Again, we just don't know when. And of course, seek out advice from a financial professional for sure. Okay. That's what I have for today. I thank you again for joining me. I don't see any questions in the Q&A box. You all have my email because you got the invitation to this event. So if you have any questions specifically for me, send me a message. I'd be happy to get back to you. I am recording this session. I will send the recording out to everybody. So if you couldn't get in until late, then you can see that. And I believe that's it. The next session will be in October. I'll be sending out an invitation in early October, and we will be on a monthly basis again. And I'll probably take a break again next summer, but not until then. So thank you so much for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy. Take care.